Welcome to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. I'm Brett Snodgrass, and today we are talking with Jynell Berkshire from Berkshire Law. We're going to be going over hot eviction talk. That's the main thing that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about landlords, what landlords should do right now during this pandemic, lawsuits, and just get an attorney's opinion on what investors should do during this stay-at-home order. Let's get to the show.
Well, thanks, Brett, and thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to your viewers as to definitely what's happening in the time of need in Indianapolis market.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm really excited to have you on the show. I know that we've had just kind of a business relationship over the past several years in regards to just kind of things that we're doing, mostly evictions. We see you a lot in the eviction court. But I know you're kind of like the well-known attorney when it comes to real estate investors. So that's why we want to have you on the show today. And especially during this time, it's just a crazy time. And we're going to talk about how that's affecting you and how it's affecting some of your clients. But before we get into some of the questions, just kind of tell who you are and how long you've been an attorney for real estate investors, and kind of takes into that.
Well, again, Jynell Berkshire. So I'm not only just a real estate attorney, as many of you may know, I'm also an investor. I've been an investor for over 20 years. I have two real estate brokerage companies. So I'm a real estate broker and I have my own property management company, but I only manage my own companies. And 100% of my practice is catered entirely to investors. So I will not represent you unless you're an investor in some capacity. Either you have to have your own portfolio. That could be from the private investors that may only have one or two up to apartment complexes. That can be general contractors, GCs, but they also have rental properties. Could be wholesalers and things of that sort. So I customize my entire practice focused just on investors from international, national, and here locally, because I'm one of you. Believe me, I've been doing this for over 20 years, so I'm one of you.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's really important because there's so many attorneys. And I remember when I first started becoming an investor, someone said, you're going to be in the courtroom if you're in real estate investing at some point, right? And you just need to be prepared. So it's really important when you're building your team to have an attorney on your side that you can go to, prior to the problem. It's good to have that relationship now.
Absolutely.
Or you have a problem and then you got to find someone and you're kind of in a panic mode. So let's talk about that. Investor specialized attorney. That's kind of the term that I've used for this. So you're very investor specialized in what you do. And so what does that mean, I guess? Like what types of things do you help investors with?
It varies depending upon how you purchase the property. So, of course, a lot of landlord-tenant issues and evictions. I do a lot of tax sale work and mortgage foreclosures, land contracts. With respect to if you buy properties out of tax sale, a lot of litigation around that is quiet title actions. If you've ever heard that term, quieting the title to clear up the title defects. And recently, in the last 2 years, I've done a lot of zoning and splitting of parcels where investors are purchasing duplexes and then they want to have each parcel separate so that they can sell them independently or as condominiums. So it really kind of varies. I stay really in my wheelhouse, as you know, Brett. I get a lot of calls. I don't represent any tenants, and believe me, I get a lot of calls. Even though if you would ever call my office, you will hear my voicemail message and all the messages, even with my paralegal and legal secretary, that specifically states, we do not represent tenants. Please do not leave a message. We will not return your call. I mean, that's literally what the message says. And I barely still get calls from tenants. But it's varying right now as to the market, depending, again, on what type of property that you have. I will review purchase agreements, negotiate issues if you have a contractor, mechanics liens. A lot of investors nowadays are having issues with contractors that they will come in and they're supposed to be rehabbing the property or even building a property, and then the investor, or not the investor, but the contractor decides to go AWOL or use the investor's money for another project, but at the same point in time records mechanics lien. So I have a lot of those issues too. So I'm primarily residential. Like 95% of what I do is residential real estate. A little bit of commercial, but not much.
There's so many different things with real estate. Like you just rattled off like a dozen things. I didn't even know if I had a zoning issue to go to an attorney. I guess I wouldn't even know. We don't deal a lot with that, trying to rezone properties, but that's new to me, and I've been doing this for a while.
Well, the
Yeah,
other main area, in Indianapolis, is code enforcement. So I deal a lot with the code enforcement with the city and the county. High weeds and grass, orders to repair, negotiating a lot of what we call those nuisance liens. If you don't pay those fines, then they roll over and become what's called a nuisance tax on your property tax statement. Going before administrative hearings, trying to get those lessened and reduced so that your property taxes will get reduced.
yeah,
Because, Marion County, the code enforcement is very stringent.
yeah. We were just talking about that. I was talking to, that's one thing that we have ran into, that they're so unorganized, and we'll buy a property and not really knowing the code enforcement doesn't show up for a month later, and then we get a notice, and then we get fined, and it's become a nuisance. So we're trying to get a good system down on figuring out if it really does, because a lot of times it doesn't show up just because the unorganization of the department, right? Um, but
Um,
that's something new to me, because again, that's one thing that I didn't even know you did, or an attorneys even did, because we've gone before the hearing. So is that mostly for out-of-state people, or do you do that for
I,
local people too?
I do it local. Whichever client needs it, I offer that service. And what's started to become an issue is you don't know which agency you're dealing with. For
Mm.
8 years, the city of Indianapolis subcontracted code enforcement to Health and Hospital Corporation of Marion County, HHC. Anybody that's an investor in Marion County knows that acronym. And it was only when our current mayor became mayor that he consolidated back that contract and put it over to the Department of Code Enforcement, which is the city of Indianapolis. So Health and Hospital Corporation does still issue code enforcement violations, but now you've got the city of Indianapolis also doing the same. And then depending upon how you purchased your house, you've got the Department of Metropolitan Development, and the city of Indianapolis has their own prosecutors for that.
Mm.
So there's two different types of prosecutors and two different agencies. And I've heard that a lot from my out-of-state international investors when they get, these code violations, either through my office as a registered agent for them or through their own registered agent. They have no idea with whom they're dealing with because Indianapolis is so segregated now in those departments.
Yeah, I think they just need to get like a business leadership person in there to help with their process, right? I think that's what they should do. um, anyways, so that's kind of what you do. That's what you specialize in. You specialize in helping investors really with whatever problem that they have. Except, do you do like actual liability where someone gets injured, things like that? Do you do that, or is it mostly paperwork?
Yeah, I really don't do that. I always tell all my clients or potential clients, look, if you have a question, run it past me, as you even know, Brett, and I'll tell you what I know and what I don't know. I'm not one of those types of attorneys. I got to take every client in every case, and I'll refer you on because I've been working in the Indianapolis market for so many years. I have a lot of fellow colleagues in different areas, but no, I normally don't go into the insurance realm whatsoever, other than if you've had maybe some property damage because of water or fire, something like that. But I don't do anything with personal injuries, slip and falls, or tenant issues. I normally will refer those on to my insurance colleagues.
Awesome.
Now, I have had to litigate some issues with contractors and bond issues to recover some money, because it's interesting with contractors in the state of Indiana, the way that the insurance, as you probably know, insurance companies will not cover poor workmanship. They'll cover the damages surrounding the poor workmanship. But if you have a contractor that has a bond, you can go after the bond for poor workmanship.
Interesting.
So there may be ways to negotiate that and do pre-suits without ever have to file litigation.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to just dig into the questions. I want to spend, definitely some time talking about kind of what's going on right now. But before we get into that, I want to ask you, like, why do investors hire you? I mean, a lot of these things you can do on your own. You can file an eviction on your own, go to the court on your own, or go to the Department of Code Enforcement, your documentation. I mean, you can go to Office Depot and get that or whatever. So why do you think why it's important for someone to have an investor-friendly attorney on their side that they can use?
Absolutely. I would say you need an investor friendly attorney when you actually look for an attorney so that they understand, what your needs are in and of itself. Clearly you can do it yourself, but at times you're going to cause yourself more issues potentially in the future than if you already had gone to an attorney to begin with. And there are some things that I get asked all the time by my clients, and I will tell them, look, you don't need to hire me to do this. And I'll suggest to them, but they still want to go ahead and hire me because they know I have the expertise. From incorporating companies with the Secretary of State, let's face facts, a lot of people can go do that themselves nowadays because it takes 10 or 15 minutes. But putting together a solid operating agreement or making sure that you have the entity structure that you want, I'd strongly advise you to look at an attorney now more so than ever with series LLCs. A lot of investors are looking at series LLCs. Also, from an eviction standpoint, or any court, even if it's not an eviction, if you are a business entity in the state of Indiana, Indiana law says you cannot recover more than $1,500 in damages unless you're retained and represented by an attorney. So I have some of my landlord clients, they'll have the property manager go in and represent them in an eviction and a damage hearing because they know that that's really basically all they want to get is $1,500 because the tenant may be judgment proof. But I also have a lot of landlords that don't realize that that's the statute. And then when they do go in for a damages hearing, the judges tell them, look, because you didn't hire legal counsel, we can only give you $1,500 as a potential judgment. And now they've lost a lot of money. Indiana is a property judgment state. Also, a lot of investors don't know that, especially the out-of-state and international investors, whereby you can collect up onto that judgment for 20 years. So when you do receive a judgment in any court of law in the state of Indiana, even if it's small claims court for $100 credit card debt, that judgment will attach to property that that defendant may own or will own in the future for up to 20 years for collection.
Wow.
Also, you get 8% statutory interest once you get that judgment. But clearly, sure, a lot of the investors can do it themselves. But as you always hear, you should have a core team, a great property manager, a tax accountant, and an attorney.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. And having an investor-friendly attorney is someone that's specialized in these different areas. And yeah, investors typically are not, especially when it comes to paperwork and things like that as well. So I really want to dig into kind of what's going on right now. Obviously, this is airing. Today is actually April the 8th. So this is about 4 or 5 days before this is going to air. So just want to, in the laws and things the news is coming out every day. So you never know what's going to happen in like 5 days. But really what's going on right now, that we know what will be going on, and that's the stay-at-home order, the pandemic of the coronavirus going around, and this is really shaking up businesses in our city and across the nation, across the world, and it's shaking up people with fear. It's shaking up real estate investors, and especially when it comes to rentals, right? I think that's probably the big thing that's really kind of the uncertain unknown, and then also possibly the foreclosures that I think you're dealing with as well. But talk to us about what's going on right now with the city of Indianapolis, Marion County, and the evictions, and what have you heard the last week or so?
Well, first and foremost, to all the viewers and listeners that are participating in the podcast or maybe looking at it after the fact, please stay safe and healthy. Listen to the news. It's changing on a daily basis, including exactly with our Indiana governor, Eric Holcomb. He's continuing to put out executive orders pretty much on a daily basis, or at least once a week. He's having not podcasts, but he's having interview sessions every single day to update the community and the citizens of the state of Indiana. So what happened and what's going on in the state is on March 19th, our governor issued an executive order 20-06. And if you go to indy.gov or just Google the governor of the state of Indiana executive orders, you will see all the orders that are there that have come out ever since the coronavirus. Now, this specific order is what all the investors are asking me and should be aware of, because this is the one that will directly impact you. And I'm going to read from that because I pulled it off just so I make sure I have it correct, even though I think I've told so many investors over the last couple of weeks, I feel like I've memorized word for word. But what's important about this order is it specifically states no eviction or foreclosure actions or proceedings involving residential real estate or property, whether rental or otherwise, may be initiated, and that word's up for dispute, between the period from the date of this executive order, which again, that was on March 19th, until the state of emergency has terminated with the coronavirus, and any applicable statutes up to interpretation in connection therewith is hereby suspended for such actions or proceedings. So that order that came out on March 19th was for 30 days, but because of the pandemic and the increased issues surrounding the pandemic and the state of the economy, and the stay-at-home orders, Governor Holcomb came out on April the 3rd and now has extended this previous order. The April 3rd executive order was 20-17. He's now extended it to and through May the 5th. So what does this mean in layman's terms? Everybody's asking me this. You cannot initiate an eviction or a mortgage foreclosure action whatsoever now. So what happens with the previous evictions, if you already had started the eviction process and maybe had gotten a writ of possession, can you still try to get these tenants out? The tenants are still responsible for paying rent and their mortgage, and their mortgages, if they would have a mortgage. And that's clearly in the executive order. Now, because of the state economy, a lot of the tenants are losing their jobs or have lost their jobs, and a lot of the landlords and investors are experiencing not getting rent. So what can you do? Basically, you can't do anything. The courts are not holding hearings whatsoever. I'm getting daily updates from the courts that they are extending the writs of possessions, especially ones that have not been executed. So what happens when you have a troubled tenant that may be causing damage? I can't even get on an emergency hearing, even if it would be telephonic appearance. The judges are just not holding any hearings whatsoever. They're just consistently getting pushed back out. So as I think I may have mentioned to you, Brett, a lot of the evictions that I already had scheduled in Marion County back in February, I'm now at the end of May on those evictions. So when we do get ready to file evictions, I totally anticipate, not getting on the docket till July, maybe August.
So you're probably thinking right now, so we got some things going on. You got tenants losing their jobs. So the likelihood of them not paying is a higher percentage. You can't evict them, so you can't evict them. And if you do evict them, it's probably going to be what, 2-3 months before you can get them out. So really for the next, right now it could be 90 days before you can get your property, maybe if not longer.
Maybe if not longer. So in Marion County, as a lot of the investors probably know, when you do file an eviction, on average in the township courts takes about 3 weeks. That's the average time, regardless of the coronavirus or not. So if that still holds true, it could be months and months from now. We have to wait until the executive order is actually lifted, first and foremost. And then I anticipate that judges will add more calendar days of when they're having evictions just to try to get caught up on their docket. But it's going to be chaos. It's just going to be pandemonium.
Like everything else right now.
But what I'm having, what I've been doing, because I've had a number of my clients request this, I'm pre-drafting the evictions. Now some of that may have to be updated as we get closer when the executive order gets lifted. So when it gets lifted, I'm going to be just filing crazy. My staff's going to be filing everything within that, hopefully that very day, if not that very next morning. In Indiana, we have electronic filing system with the courts. A lot of investors may not know that. So I can file from 12:01 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. And believe you me, there's been many times I've been up way after hours until 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock getting things filed because I want it that day. So when we didn't have that system with electronic filing. Everything had to be in by 4:30 p.m. and the government offices closed, or
Yeah.
unless it's sent by certified mail.
That is a good thing. I do love the electronic filing system, and we've used that too for electronically recording documents, things like that. It's really cool that Indianapolis does that. So cool. So what advice are you kind of giving? I mean, I know that you've had some clients calling, and so they're not getting rent. Their their tenant is messing up the property a little bit. And then so tenants aren't paying, but then they want the landlord to come in and fix something maybe. But what are some things do you have any good news?
I'm trying, Brett. Okay, I'm trying. Well, what I've been mentioning, of course, is just document everything like you would in any type of practice. Call the police, make police reports if you need to do that. I've had a couple clients that we've had to consistently do that and get the police out there. Try to work with the tenant as much as you can. If they have any type of money, work with them. I've had some clients I've suggested to try to do cash for keys. That's always a good thing. The issue becomes it's the ripple effect. The tenants are not going to leave because they don't have any money. So even if you offered them cash for keys, there's no place for them to go. They can't find housing. So unfortunately, you're somewhat stuck. The federal government has come out with a lot of monetary opportunities and loans for small business owners. A lot of investors may not think of themselves as a small business owner, but you are a small business owner and you may have multiple LLCs. So I strongly encourage you to look into the government funding programs that are coming out with Small Business Administration. You may be able to qualify for some of those low pay interest loans that are going on right now, which are about 1%. Some of the loan payments are actually forgiven under the PPP program. You can get up to, that's primarily to help you with your payroll. It's a payroll. You can get up to 8 weeks forgiven as a grant. So I've been helping a number of my clients over the last couple of weeks start applying for those types of financing and loans to help get them through all of their rental properties, because I have some clients, their payroll, they're losing $20,000, $30,000 a month. But even for the small investors, what I call the mom and pops, I mean, I only have one or two properties, $500-$600 or $1,000 a month. That's still hurting everybody's pocketbooks.
Yeah, and they still got to pay their mortgage. They should, right?
It will be interesting because I anticipate we won't really see the economic impact of this for about 18 months to 2 years, and it may end up being like 2008, 2009, 2010 with mortgage foreclosures. Because let's face facts, a lot of people may lose their properties because the burden is still on us as the investor who hold the mortgage. If you have a mortgage, you have to still continue to pay.
But foreclosures wise, they have to go through this whole long process, and that could take, especially right now, months, years to get it finally, and then that's where it could hit a year from now. So
in Marion County, it takes on average about 6 to 9 months to go through the entire mortgage foreclosure process. So that's a long process. Indiana, we're a judicial state, like I think I may have mentioned earlier. So we have to go through a sheriff's sale in any county, wherever you would file. So that in and of itself is a lengthy process as well. Hopefully you cannot hear my cat meowing in the background. And I'm sorry. That's what happens when we're working from home.
Right. No, it's all good. It's all good. Well, thank you so much for just kind of giving your wisdom on this. And I always like to see, because you're a small business too, right? And I always like to ask the question of, how have you been affected? I mean, has it slowed down for you? Are you suffering from this? Are you getting more business? Some businesses are thriving right through this because of what they do, right? But how about you?
Well, I'm a sole proprietor, as you know, and for me, I've been able to sustain it right now, but I'm very nervous. I've had a lot of influx of new clients that have been calling me, and then just help managing my current clients. But I work from home. I sold my commercial office about 7 years ago. And I have a virtual paralegal and a virtual legal secretary. I've been working for me for almost 10 years. So I was already accustomed to working out of my home office. So from a technology standpoint, I really haven't had to change much. A lot of people don't realize I do work from home. But sure, I mean, I'm very nervous right now. It's sustaining, and I'm very blessed, and thank you all if you're a client out there of mine that may be listening or watching. I appreciate the ongoing support, but yeah, as a small business owner, I'm very concerned, like we all should be.
Yeah, yeah. And everything's just kind of uncertain right now, and everything's just a mess. I mean, you talk about the evictions are a mess. We talk about the programs, the government programs out there, which there's the payroll protection program, there's the disaster relief SBA loan that you can apply for. But even that stuff, it's a complete mess. There's so many applications. I was talking to one of the bankers that I bank with. He says, "Well, we got 27,000 applicants in the last 4 days, so we're a little behind," just something like that. I'm like, oh my goodness. So we're all in this together. This is probably like the first time that like the whole entire world is just in this together, right? Because I was talking to one of the guys on our team today, and he was struggling with some different things, and I'm just like, hey, it's like, be grateful for what you have and right now, because everybody's going through the exact same thing that you are.
That's true. We're all in it together, and it'll be interesting to see how we change and adapt to this once we get through the pandemic, how we work from now on. Everybody has always said we can work from anywhere with the internet. So it'll be interesting to see how the judicial system may finally catch up with technology. Because let's face facts, the judicial system is very slow in implementing anything, which was rightfully so. But I had a telephonic appearance this morning in St. Joseph County, and we had difficulties just connecting because the judge wasn't in chambers. He wasn't physically in the courthouse. And so, acclimating some of the judges on how to use technology, that's been an interesting challenge for attorneys as well, especially me. And, we're the legal profession, as we all know, is very old school. We like to kill a lot of trees, as we always say. We're still very paper dominant, even in this electronic world. So it'll be interesting to see how all the law offices adapt, as well as just everybody in general.
Yeah, definitely. We've had some people on. We've talked about kind of the electronic notary thing, kind of with Indiana possibly getting pushed through. This is really bringing that to the surface, and so many different things. Because before the call, we were actually talking about evictions. Like, why don't they do it over Zoom or whatever electronically? Like that could save so much time, right? I don't know. It's just interesting. But
we made that suggestion, as I mentioned to you, to a couple of people. Right. And I've not received any feedback, of course, because I think it's probably the technology challenge. But nowadays, everybody's using Zoom or some other platform. So
yeah, definitely.
And it may end up we have to get to that point, depending upon how long this pandemic goes on, and more extensions that our local judges may have to figure out some way to start accommodating the world around us, and evictions and other individuals that are still filing lawsuits. Now, I want to clarify that, though. You can still file lawsuits. You just cannot file evictions and mortgage foreclosures.
Gotcha.
So I'm still filing lawsuits. I have numerous lawsuits that are going on that are not related to eviction and mortgage foreclosures. So I don't want anybody to think, a whole judicial system has stopped. If you're filing for breach of contract of a contractor, you can still file that lawsuit. If you're trying to quiet title defects off of a property you may have purchased in tax sale, you can still file that. Those types of lawsuits. You can file collection lawsuits. It's just not mortgage foreclosures and evictions.
Yeah, definitely. Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us on the Indy Investor Pod today. I always like to just put this out there to our listening audience that Indianapolis is an amazing place to invest. And this is why we started doing this. We get asked a lot of questions, whether it's through social media or just our email or just someone giving us a call. We get a lot of questions about Indianapolis investing. So we decided, hey, let's just try to answer some of these questions on a podcast. That's why we're doing this. We're trying to bring the best value that we can. And if you guys have any topics that you want us to discuss, you can reach out to me on Facebook. Just search Brett Snodgrass on Facebook and message me there, or Brian Snyder. And he has also interviewed people on this podcast. And Jynell, if you need an attorney, I'm sure she'd be really happy to help. And where can someone find you, Jynell?
They can of course, Google me or go to www.berkshirelawllc.com, BERKSHIRELAWLLC.com, or they can call my office at area code 317-434-3000. And I strongly encourage investors, do not be discouraged about the Indianapolis market. As Brett knows, and I'll only mention quickly, I'm the attorney that's been championing the Clayton Morris and Ocean Point and Burt Whalen issues that have happened in the Indianapolis market. I've had a lot of third parties call me and they don't want to invest here anymore in Indianapolis, but it's a great community. It's a great city. We're still growing. So don't let those issues stop you or concerns.
Yeah, definitely. And I just think it's a great time to invest. There's a lot of opportunities. That's horrible to say because of all this, but obviously, we talk about 2008. There's some people that went down and there's some people that rose up. And I was actually one of those that rose up and took advantage of some of the opportunities. And there's going to be similar opportunities after this thing weathers the storm. And there's opportunities right now. So we're still going strong and we're doing, we can still buy properties, sell properties and close on them. So if you guys are listening to this, thank you so much for tuning in and thank you
for having me.
It's been awesome and we'll chat soon.
All right. Thanks. Bye. Happy investing.